The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, supported the demonstrations carried out by the Venezuelan people to demand the release of more than 200 nationals kidnapped by the United States government in El Salvador. In Ecuador, affected communities denounced government inactivity and lack of transparency in response to shortage of drinking water due to recent oil spill. And the genocidal forces of Israel carried out a ground offensive in Gaza, leaving more than 500 dead and 80% of health centers out of operation. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, supported the demonstrations carried out by the Venezuelan people to demand the release of more than 200 nationals kidnapped by the United States government in El Salvador. During the 48th edition of the National Fair of Cebu and its crosses, President Nicolás Maduro reiterated his condemnation of the kidnapping of 238 Venezuelan migrants in the concentration camp of El Salvador, the main center of the repressive prison system of the Nayib Bukele regime. Likewise, the Venezuelan president highlighted the unity of the Venezuelan people during the collection of signatures carried out in every Bolivar square of the country by the Venezuelan people in solidarity with the illegally detained young Venezuelan nationals. In this sense, the Venezuelan head of state highlighted the work of the Bolivarian government together with human rights organizations to achieve the release of the Venezuelan nationals and their safe and dignified return to the country. This Wednesday night, the plenary of the National Electoral Council of Ecuador approved the modification of the calendar for the second round of the 2025 general elections and established the spending caps. The electoral campaign will be extended from Sunday, March 23rd to April 10th. As will be recalled, it was initially set to begin one day later, that is to say on March 24th. According to the plenary of the highest electoral body, the purpose of the modification is to give the voter more time to know the proposals of the candidates. Likewise, the board of directors of the council fixed in $2,197,810.24 the limit of electoral expenses for both candidates. In Ecuador, affected communities denounced government inactivity and lack of transparency in response to shortage of drinking water due to recent oil spill. The incident, caused by a landslide that damaged the Trans-Ecuadorian pipeline, has caused an unprecedented environmental emergency. The situation has worsened due to the lack of access to drinking water for more than 500,000 people. Although measures have been implemented to distribute water through water tankers and Ecuadorian Navy ships, local authorities and indigenous communities have denounced inactions and lack of transparency on the part of the government. The affected communities are demanding a more effective and transparent response on the impact of the spill on public health and biodiversity, as well as an efficient contingency plan to clean up the oil and restore access to drinking water. In Mexico, the Megapolis Environmental Commission suspended on Wednesday the atmospheric contingency in the metropolitan area of the Mexico Valley after a decrease in ozone concentrations. According to a press release from the entity, most recent information from the air quality monitoring system forecasts that a high-pressure system over the Mexico Valley basin move away from the area. This will lead to a forecast of more ventilation with a medium cloudy to cloudy sky for most of the day and a decrease in the ambient temperature. Moreover, the Commission plans and executes actions for environmental protection, preservation and restoration of the ecological balance in the region of the Mexico Valley. In Brazil, 10 months after the worst floods in its history, the state of Rio Grande do Sul is trying to recover normality. However, new extreme weather events and the lack of response from local authorities are raising alarms among the population. Our correspondent Ignacio Lemos tells us more.
Porto Alegre bears the scars of the biggest flood in its history, but everything indicates that the heavy rains that Rio Grande do Sul suffered 10 months ago will not be the last extreme weather event. The state's climatic reality is one of contrasts. A week ago, the heat was record-breaking, reaching 40 degrees Celsius.
It is not normal how hot it was last week. It was horrible.
Porto Alegre suele ser caliente y húmeda en verano.
Porto Alegre is usually hot and humid in summer, but the relative humidity in the air is currently around 30 to 20%. This is due to a meteorological phenomenon characterized by the elevation of the water temperature in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, which generates dry periods in the south of Brazil and rainy periods in the southeast and northeast.
People working in that heat, a lot of people felt sick. They had high blood pressure, they fainted.
Nuevamente, los más vulnerables fueron los más impactados.
The most vulnerable were the most impacted by the floods. Recycling cooperatives, which are essential to prevent waste from clogging drainage systems, have yet to receive support from local governments to recover the pressing machines that were damaged by the floods.
Damnificadas por las inundaciones.
We have to rebuild the floor. The presses, they got wet. It's still difficult. It's just the beginning.
En el último mes, una sequía severa afectó.
In the last month, a severe drought affected 210 of the 497 municipalities in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. The losses between 2020 and 2024 amount to about $54 billion. However, agribusiness, the sector responsible for the highest greenhouse gas emissions, does not take measures to diversify crops and reforestation to prevent climate change.
Para prevenir el cambio climático.
That investment in the agenda to protect biodiversity, combat desertification, and confront climate change is an action to protect the environment. But for those who are not moved by protecting Mother Nature, you can be sure that they will be moved by what will come out of their pockets every year.
El precio de los inmuebles se redujo exponencialmente.
The price of real estate fell exponentially in the regions that were flooded, and the increase in rents is putting pressure on the population of popular neighborhoods previously considered dangerous due to real estate speculation. The number of homeless people grew by almost 15% in the months following the floods.
There are areas that were not directly affected by the rains, but were affected by the increase in population in those neighborhoods, as if the periphery was inflated.
14
solidarity kitchens of the Landless Movement deliver tons of food daily to the vulnerable population of Porto Alegre. The humanitarian actions continued in partnership with federal government programs after the floods.
Since then, we have not stopped helping, and we started to discover more and more people who needed our help.
Los sedimentos de las inundaciones.
The sediments of the floods in the rivers that reach the large cities of Rio Grande do Sul hinder drainage to the sea in the event of new torrential rains. A bad omen for a population that has not yet erased from its memory what happened in May 2024 and is already experiencing new extreme weather events.
Nuevos eventos climáticos extremos. Ignacio Lemos para teleSUR.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Mexico's Attorney General reported on Wednesday irregularities in an investigation by state authorities into an alleged cartel killing site and training camp at a ranch in the state of Jalisco. 6 months after the ranch in Teuchtitlan Guadalajara was found by authorities. A so-called search collective found shared bone fragments and personal items, raising questions about the original investigation by the Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office. Attorney General Alejandro Gertz Manero said that investigators in Jalisco failed to register evidence and fingerprints and process vehicles found at the ranch, 3 of which were later stolen. He also stated that federal prosecutors were also not alerted about the site, as is a standard procedure, and cast blame on the State Prosecutor's Office despite the National Guard carrying out an operation last year at the site.
There is still no conclusive report in that sense. They did find remains. This is very important. They did find a series of bone remains, small pieces of bones. The report sent to us by the prosecutor's office does not guarantee the credibility and the specific characteristics of such bone remains.
During her official visit to Mexico, Laura Sarabia, Foreign Affairs Minister of Colombia, met with the head of the Ministry of Economy, Marcelo Ebrard. The main point of the agenda has been the strengthening of trade and customs cooperation between both nations. Likewise, the officials agreed to work on projects that promote agriculture and transportation. In order to consolidate this reinforcement of bilateral cooperation, they also agreed to establish a technical team to simplify customs and phytosanitary procedures. The head of the Colombian diplomacy also proposed, within the framework of this visit, to expand the meeting of foreign ministers within the framework of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States to strengthen regional markets. And Nicaragua advances in the modernization of its port infrastructure with strategic investments that will strengthen the operational capacity of one of its main ports. Our colleague Kenya Dona with the details.
En un esfuerzo por fortalecer las capacidades técnicas y
in an effort to strengthen the technical and operational capabilities of Port Corinto, 40 Port Equipment acquired this important investment as part of the project to modernize and improve port infrastructure, with the objective of boosting Nicaragua's logistical and commercial growth.
Impulsar el crecimiento logístico y comercial de Nicaragua.
We are strengthening the capacities of our port, the Port of Corinto, and we are thus linking ourselves more with those companies that come to work in Nicaragua. And once they are here in Nicaragua, they will help us to promote more projects and more investments, which will also benefit our people. And so here we are fulfilling our people in our main task, which is the fight against poverty.
El gobierno de Nicaragua continúa desarrollando.
The government of Nicaragua continues to develop high-impact works at Port Corinto to optimize services to national and international companies, guaranteeing greater efficiency and safety in operations.
All of this will result in a significant advance in service and efficiency, so that port operations can gradually improve and advance along the path we have to follow to turn the Port of Corinto into an important port in the Central American region.
Cabe destacar que Puerto Corinto moviliza más del 80%.
It is worth mentioning that the Port Corinto moves more than 80% of the country's export and import products, establishing itself as a key axis for national and international trade.
We are approximately handling almost 4 million tons a year. 4 million tons are arriving in different types of ships. Last year, we handled 487 ships, and obviously that gives us about 200,000 20-foot containers handled in the year. Corinto moves more than 80% of the export and import product.
Corinto mueve más del 80% del producto de exportación e importación.
Con estas acciones, el gobierno
These actions by the government of Nicaragua reflect its commitment to sustainable development and regional integration, positioning the country as a logistical reference in Central America.
Kenia Doña, TeleSUR, Nicaragua.
Costa Rica is facing a significant increase in cases of respiratory viruses, which has generated a health alert in the country. The situation has been particularly noticeable in recent weeks, with an increase in demand for medical services related to respiratory symptoms. Health authorities are working to strengthen epidemiological surveillance and ensure that health centers are prepared to deal with the increasing cases. In addition, vaccination campaigns are being implemented and recommendations are being distributed to the population on how to protect themselves against these viruses. The community has been urged to follow public health recommendations, such as the use of masks in enclosed areas and frequent hand washing to help control the situation. And we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Fun short break, we'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. Amid great controversy, 64,000 files related to the assassination of U.S. President John F. Kennedy were released in 24 hours. The U.S. government released to the public more than 1,000 documents related to the controversial assassination of former President John F. Kennedy following a presidential order from Donald Trump issued on March 17th. Through photographs, reports, and manuscripts, the new files support the official version of the crime, pointing once again to Lee Harvey Oswald as the possible one responsible. The release of the documents became a reality after Justice Department lawyers spent hours reviewing the documents, seeking to ensure that their release would not violate U.S. law. Trump said the documents would be released uncensored, although early reviews indicate that there is information that has been reading up. The genocidal forces of Israel carried out a ground offensive in Gaza, leaving more than 500 dead and 80% of health centers out of operation. Israel launched a ground offensive in central and southern Gaza Strip after breaking ceasefire. The offensive follows the bombardment of Gaza by Israeli aircraft this week and under the justification of increasing the security zone. The attacks have left more than 500 dead and hundreds of wounded, while health centers have also been affected. In this context, Israel has assured that this is only the beginning and the operation will be doubled in strength in the coming hours. During the early hours of Thursday morning, the Israeli Defense Forces claimed to have intercepted a Yemeni projectile before it reached its target. They also confirmed that sirens were activated in several areas of the country. This is the second Yemeni missile to be registered since the unilateral break-in by Israel of the ceasefire agreement reached in Qatar. Yemen warned the genocidal occupier that should it resume its crimes against the Palestinian people, it would resume its attacks against the occupation. Venezuela celebrated on March 19th the National Day of the Craftsman and Craftswoman with the Festival of Knowledge and Makes. The event held in Plaza Bolívar in Caracas includes live demonstrations of various artisan disciplines such as carving, weaving, and ceramics, as well as an intimate concert with singer-songwriters such as Marta Doudier and Luisa Diaz. The celebration, made official by President Nicolás Maduro through a decree in the official gazette, seeks to honor the work of craftsmen and craftswomen as an essential part of the country's cultural identity. The Ministry of Culture, through the Art Network Foundation, organized a special program during the whole month of March, where activities will be carried out in several Bolivar squares of the country, including offerings to the liberator Simón Bolívar and recognitions to outstanding artisans. In the United Kingdom, the Screen Cuba Festival celebrates its second edition, an event that allows to rediscover Cuban filmmaking and culture. The festival, which runs from March 16th to 29th, offers films ranging from classics of Cuban cinema to more current films and includes parallel activities such as talks at universities and dialogues with British specialists. The festival's special guests include the Vice President of the Cuban Institute of Film and Art Industry, Gladys González Martínez, and the specialist in Cuban film, Silvia Padrón Durán. This event, organized by the Cuba Solidarity Campaign and the Cuban Fund for Music, seeks to raise funds for the restoration and preservation of Cuban cinematographic heritage. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.